introduction, and yes, indeed. What we're going to present today is a very exciting project that we're doing in the city of Amsterdam. We will be three persons presenting. That's Jonathan Carter, that's Daniel Stefanovic, and that is myself. And each of us will take a specific part of the presentation. So, Jonathan, can I ask you to quickly introduce yourself and Glimworm, of course?
Yeah. Hi, Rob. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, my name is Jonathan Carter. I'm the co-founder and technical director of Glimworm IT, which is an Amsterdam-based technology company. My co-founder is Paul Manwaring, that is sometimes also online with these webinars. I'm actually in the context of this presentation, I'm the initiator of the iBeacon Living Lab, which is a great initiative to stimulate Internet of Things and iBeacon startups throughout the Netherlands. I think that's enough for the moment, because you'll cover everything else later, I think, Rob.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Okay, Daniel, a quick word about yourself. Can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Daniel Stevanovic, and I'm working as integration consultant at Yenlo. And my background comes from Java development using Java, EE, Spring, and other frameworks. And I'm currently working on integration projects and implementing with WSO2 stack. So, and I will be presenting how we developed this solution using WSO2 products.
Okay, thank you.
That's all.
Lastly, myself, I'm a senior consultant with Yenlo, solution architect, integration architect, but also a trainer. So I do many of the trainings for the WSO2 products, complete stack, from SEP to ESB to API Manager to BUM. Everything that's there are trainings for, I will actually do them. But enough about me, enough about us. What we're going to talk about is quickly about Yenlo. So we are a premier partner of WSO2 Global Enterprise, and our focus is on integration of solutions based on Java open source. And as a premier partner, we offer the whole suite of stuff from WSO2, product support, development, quick starts, training and certification, managed services, and of course also organize some WSO2 events. If you put that all in very nice graphical images, you will see the stuff that we do, and we do that across the world, from the United States to the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, everywhere in Europe. Anywhere our clients are, we will go there and we'll help them with WSO2 solutions. Okay, so the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to talk about the iBeacon Living Lab and how we've built that with WSO2. So basically, there are four main parts. So a quick introduction to the iBeacon Mile. That's going to be done by me. Then Jonathan is going to talk about what's a beacon actually. So we'll be talking a little bit about beacons, but Jonathan will actually tell you what a beacon is and what's so special about a beacon, etc. Then Daniel will talk about developing the WSO2 solution, how we did that, what kind of WSO2 components we actually used, and I'm going to wrap up with next steps / the future, and after that we're going to do Q&A. So let's get started in the introduction about the iBeacon Mile. So if you look at the iBeacon Mile, sorry, next slide. What is it actually? Well, the iBeacon Mile is the largest living lab in the world with regards to beacons. One of the challenges is that you have when you want to test beacons, and Jonathan will talk a little bit about that, so I'll keep it short, is that you need to put them out there in the public space, and for that you need partners, because you can't simply just put them everywhere you want. You need permission from owners, from the city, etc. So when we thought about the iBeacon Mile, we knew we had to get the right partners on board to make it work, so that people, citizens, but also the creative industries, small SMEs, can actually test beacons. Because although beacons have been around for some time, we now only see what the real value is, and I think that the best applications or the best use cases for beacons need to be actually still invented. So over a stretch of what's called a mile, it's actually slightly longer, it's almost 2 miles, of the beacon mile, there will be beacons placed every, let's say, 60 meters, that will allow people with smartphones to pick them up. And that will go from the central station in Amsterdam to a naval base nearby. And actually in between there are several interesting things, like for instance the one that you see right now, that's one of the museums, the Nemo Museum. Behind that, slightly visible, is a nautical museum. There is the public library of Amsterdam, the main one. There are shops, there is the train station. So it's very wide variety of places and things that we'll find on the Beacon Mile. So it is also a stepping stone for to the rest of the city. So we don't consider this to be the end. This is only the beginning. And what we've done here is we've basically put in some very simple beacons, as you can see here. So if you look at the left corner, the left part of the image, that's actually the train station, and it goes all the way to the naval base. What you also see, there are some beacons out there that are not part of the Beacon Mile, that had to do with the sail event, the biggest event in Amsterdam this year with regards to tall ships and all kinds of ships, where almost 2.5 million people were actually visiting. And that is basically the setup that we have now. So it's a living lab. It's trying to experiment. It's talking about what can we do, what kind of content can we actually put on the Beacon Mile. And what I would like to show you is content that's related to one of the landmarks actually on the mile. I will not show it completely, but this is historical footage of the train station in Amsterdam, I think about 70 years ago. And what we can do with the beacons is that if someone is near the train station and is interested in this kind of information, we can push that information to them on the smartphone, on the tablet, or wherever. So I'll now start it. Okay, I'll stop it now because I think that we have an international audience and not everyone speaks Dutch. But this is one of the examples where we put historical footage about buildings, about the use of buildings on the iBeacon Mile as one of the ways that we can add value to the people who are actually using it. But I think there are more ways, and Jonathan is now going to talk about what a beacon is and the other forms of values. Jonathan, I'm handing it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Rob. I'm going to come back to one of the points that you mentioned earlier about it being all about partnership building. I think that was a great way to put it, actually. So what is a beacon? We came up with this simple way to describe it, which is that beacons give things a personality. So they actually allow a doorway to welcome you. They allow a painting to tell you about itself. They let the city, as I've put here, give some public information right on your location. When I say right on your location, I mean with something more precise than you could do with your GPS. And the advertisers also make deeper connections and give you content where it's relevant, which I'll explain later on, some examples of that. And we're also seeing an increasing use of beacons with helping the elderly and people who have mobility problems getting around the city. And also they can make things fun. There's lots of games and citywide games based on beacons now. Next. Okay, so let's just go back a few steps. Why the iBeacon mile? Well, I think it's very good for me to describe what problem we were trying to tackle. I myself run a technology company. We make hardware and software, and what we have found is that it's very, very difficult to demonstrate and test your real creative solutions in a real-life urban environment. And it's only then that you will actually answer very difficult but essential questions. What do I mean by this? Well, to give an example, a few years ago we were working on a parking camera, and we kind of entered a few hackathons and we entered a few competitions, and people loved the idea. And then when we had sales talks with cities, it proved almost impossible to get a spot to deploy them in order to demonstrate them. And it's a chicken and egg problem. If you can't demonstrate them, then you can't prove that they're worthwhile. And if you can't prove they're worthwhile, you can't sell them. So we identified this as a big nut that needed to be cracked. Maybe next. Yeah, so what do? We decided to form partnerships in order to try and get permissions to install Internet of Things devices. Because we are in the iBeacon business, we started off with iBeacons, because there are a lot of questions about whether iBeacons and the related technology, so all sorts of Bluetooth technology surrounds iBeacons, whether it can be used in a civic environment to actually help the city and to help the citizen. So we came up with several different sorts of installation and route that we would like to install with beacons and other Internet of Things technologies. And the first of those types of route we called installation type 1 route, which is a up to 2 kilometers walking route with beacons lining it. And we thought that this would be good for testing out applications for public wayfinding, for tourist information, especially in Amsterdam. Tourism is the main industry here. High points of interest, signage in your own language we thought was very relevant, and also augmenting existing apps with additional proximity data. Just to explain that, I mean there are a lot of apps which come into the App Store which are specifically for iBeacons. So, for instance, things which are walking routes around museums. But there's also a lot of apps which could use iBeacons if they were already there. So one of the questions we wanted to ask is if a city would actually install iBeacons strategically, would app developers use them? That's one of the questions that we laid out in our foundation. So next. Okay, so a few technical concepts. We decided from day one that we didn't want to just put regular iBeacons around the place, because they are what you see on the left-hand side of the presentation here. They're largely unconnected. That means that the beacon transmits up to around 50 meters using Bluetooth. That signal is picked up by mobile phones and by smartphones, Android, iOS devices, and it can communicate between those devices. But it's not connected to the internet, it's not connected to the cloud, and it can't serve any larger purpose than being part of an iBeacon mesh. So what we did is we decided from day one to put what we call connected beacons, which are connected to the internet through a new low-power network called LoRa, which I'll explain later, but this is a brand new Internet of Things technology. And that gives us the opportunity to actually reconfigure the beacons at distance, to set up different scenarios if people would like to test them out, to also connect them to sensors and to weather stations and to other devices to make this an Internet of Things living lab, which is really what we were going for from day one. Next. So on the mile, you will find many different lampposts, which all have beacons attached to them. Some of them are the simple unconnected beacons. Some of them are the connected LoRaWAN beacons. Where they're connected to LoRaWAN, they typically don't have just one beacon in there, but we put 3 or 4 so that we can test out different scenarios for different app developers simultaneously. And we've also connected some sensors which are to do with largely to do with environmental monitoring, so temperature, weather, air pressure. But the concept is that now we have the permission to use all of these locations. Every month we ask IoT companies or smart city companies if they would like to use those locations. So each month we go and open up the boxes, and if somebody wants to test their own product or their own concept in there, then that's what we're trying to do. So in a way, we kick-started it by installing this set of pre-made equipment. The idea is that it would grow and be used by multiple different companies or individuals that want to prove something in real urban space, and that's the key thing. If you really want to prove something or test something. Next. So there are 3 components really to deploying iBeacon, a large iBeacon deployment. You have, of course, apps, which are represented bottom left here, and iBeacons, they transmit a certain signal, but that signal is turned into activity and it's turned into actionable items using the software on the iPhone or the Android devices. So app developers have to be a huge part of this partnership that we've created. Bottom right, we have the physical beacons and also the real estate that it goes on. You see there not a lamppost, but you see a billboard, and that is because one of the partners that has joined us is a group called JC Deco, who actually provide all of the bus and tram stops in the city of Amsterdam. And by using their locations, their real estate, as I call them, we're able to deploy much further than just the original mile. In the middle at the top, that's the cloud platform. Now, your beacons have to be registered somewhere in order that you can provide data about them and you can gather usage information about them. And this is where WSO2 is our premier partner, providing the cloud part of the whole iBeacon service. And it's a very difficult job in this case because it's a living laboratory. We're not designing it for one purpose, so we can't go to a client and ask them their set of functional requirements. We know that there will be dozens, if not hundreds, of apps connected to it, dozens, if not hundreds, of beacons connected to it, sensors, other IoT devices that we don't even know about yet because we are going to be liaising with all sorts of small and medium businesses and startups on that side. So the platform in the center at the top there has to be very, very flexible. And one of the things that we wanted to achieve is to keep this flexible and to keep it open source whilst maintaining a professional level of availability. WSO2, in my research, is the only open source API management platform. It's built on open source technology. I think the entire is open source, but it really fits the bill there because you want to have something which is fully open source, but you can also deploy a serious mission critical cloud on it. So that's the reason why we're very, very happy when Rob and Yenlo contacted us and offered to be a partner in this venture. Next. I think I've only got another couple of slides. Yes, just a quick technology update for people that don't know about LoRaWAN. I know it's not the real center point of this presentation, but there is, if you want to deploy smart city Internet of Things devices around a city, you very quickly come up to the problem of connectivity. The only way that you have been able to put devices spread around the city at the moment is by either using SIM cards and telephone technology, which is very, very expensive in terms of the energy it uses. So it makes having battery-operated devices quite a challenge, more than just a challenge. And the alternatives are really trying to make a whole mesh network, which again is very complicated. This LoRa technology is brand new. It's really only being deployed now in Holland as one of the first countries in the world. It's open source. It's developed by IBM open source. LoRaWAN is an open source project. And it enables you to send very small amounts of data, so I'm talking 20, 30 characters, every, let's say, minute or two, up to 30 kilometers in the sort of free space, and let's say up to 3 kilometers in the city, and the devices can operate for 10 years on a battery. So we're really, as part of this Living Lab, we're lucky to be on the cusp of this new communication method. And we're able to be a test bed for it, and it's I would say it's working very well at the moment. This is really a future technology if you don't know about it. Next, or is that the last one, Rob?
That's actually the last one, Jonathan. So
Okay.
Thank you for your contribution. Be sure to hang around because there will be some questions with regards to the beacons. I already see some coming in. We talked a little bit about the WSO2 solution, and now it's up to Daniel to actually tell us a little bit on what we've built and how we've built it. So Daniel, the floor is yours, and if you want to go to the next slide, please say.
Yes, thank you, Rob. Yeah, okay. So in developing this platform, we have chosen to use the API Manager, Enterprise Service Bus, and Data Services Server from WSO2 stack of products. All those products were used well out of the box with minimal changes, which allowed us to develop the first solution very fast. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so to explain a bit in more detail about each of those components, I'll start with Data Service Server. So in order to get information about beacons, so where is a beacon, what is near it, all that data is being stored in MySQL database, and we have used Data Services Server to expose the data through web services on top of it. So even though currently we have a small number of beacons, around 60 or so, this will be a future-proof solution So data services server is, as all WSO2 products, it is built on top of the Carbon platform, which is a component-based middleware platform, and being based on the Carbon, it inherits all enterprise-grade components like governance, security, clustering, statistics, and many more. As you can see in this picture, at its core, it's using data service server is using Axis2 web service engine to support SOAP message processing, and in order to define a data service, that is done by specifying it in XML file, which has to be written in compliance with data services descriptor language. Also, besides the Axis2 engine, WSO2 data service server is using another Apache product that's Axiom, which is used to generate XML responses on the fly. So now I will show you how those data services are really being created. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as I said, the definition is simple XML file, which you can, of course, write on yourself in any text editor, but definitions also can be done from GUI. So first, you basically select a data source, which in this case is a MySQL database, but data services server supports any kind of relational database, CSV files, Google spreadsheets, anything can be used as a data source. So in this case, you first, after defining your data source, you start by specifying SQL query. As you can see in this picture, this is a simple select query, and after you specify it, you can specify also if you have some input parameters by providing input mappings, and also how your output should look like. As you can see on these links, you can automatically generate both input and output mappings. Rob, please, next slide. So here you can see how the definition of output mappings looks like. You can customize it as needed or use the automatically generated one. After you have defined your query, next thing that needs to be done is to create an operation. Yeah, thank you, Rob. So the operation is operation in sense of SOAP operation, which you basically just give a name and specify which query should be executed once this operation is being called. And after completing these 3 steps, you're basically done, and you have a working service that can be used to fetch data from your data source. The other component that we used while building this platform is API Manager, and API Manager is it's a complete solution for creating, publishing, managing APIs, and managing all the aspects of the life cycle. So as it is shown in this picture, it consists of a couple of components. On the top left, you can see the API Publisher application, API publisher application is used to publish, to advertise, manage lifecycle of an API, and it can be also used to analyze statistics. On the top right corner, you can see API Store application, which, well, basically it resembles the Google Play Store or Apple App Store, where developers can sign up and search for an API, and afterwards, when they find something they like, they can subscribe to it and start using it. It also engages the community around it, so people are able to comment on API, put the ratings there. So, and main component of the API manager is API gateway, which you can see down on the picture. So the API gateway is based on another WSO2 product that's ESB, and it's used as basically as a pass-through message routing, which has a high performance. And on API gateway, you can manage security, throttling, so limiting number of calls. You can easily scale it up, set up caching there, so, and many more things. It also supports a number of protocols like SOAP, REST, JSON, XML. So, and sorry, can you go back to previous slide? One more component that's there, that's the key manager. Key manager is responsible of handling the identities, security, and access tokens. Access tokens in the sense of OAuth token, which is supported by API manager. On the right side of this picture, you can see the blue square that says monitoring and analytics. So these APIs can be monitored by, for example, business application monitoring server from WSO2, which can give you quite detailed reports about the usage of particular API. Next slide, please. So I will show you now how to publish an API, and it's really easy. It requires only 3 steps basically. So in the first step, you define your visibility. You can provide a thumbnail image, some description and tags. All this information is important because that's basically first information that your subscribers, so developers, will see, and based on the tags, your APIs will be shown as a result of some search through the store. So after that, you define your URL patterns for your resources. And next slide, please. In the next step, you provide you provide your implementation details. So backend endpoints, as you can see here, you can provide the production endpoints and also sandbox endpoints. So you can use sandbox for your testing purposes. What else you can specify here is some security scheme, but also you can provide your WSDL or WADL definitions to be available. Yeah, next slide, please. And as a final step, you can define throttling tires, which by default the API manager comes with 4 predefined tires, but you can, of course, customize it as needed. You can select on which transports this API will be available, and as I said before, since this API manager is actually using part of the ESB features, you can also customize your flow. So you can specify some sort of mediation and attach it to your in or out flow or fault flow. And you can also, if needed, enable caching of the results. Sorry, Rob, still on the previous slide. So what's one more important thing that you can specify here is are the business informations. So by business information, those are owner of the API, business owner or technical owner, and their contact informations, so that developers, when they are examining API or thinking of using it, or when they run into any problems and have any questions, they know who to contact. Yeah, next slide, please. So once you published your API, it is automatically available in the API store. Here you can see some of the published APIs. So in this API store enables you to search for an API. So, but it also enables for developers to self-sign up to an API to the store in order to get access to the APIs. This self-sign-up process is enabled automatically out of the box, but you can, of course, customize it for your own needs by attaching some business process behind it, involve human action in it, so whatever you want basically, and whichever BPL processor you want to use. And of course you can use WSO2 business processor for that purpose. So after signing up, users can subscribe to an API, and what you can see right now on this picture, here they can see all the information that were entered while publishing the APIs, and you subscribe to an API by selecting, well, by defining your application that will use this, and here you can also select the throttling tire. So once user is subscribed to an API, he can see all the details of his subscriptions, and also he can generate and afterwards use the consumer key and secrets, and also access tokens. And yeah, you can start using the APIs. So in between the API manager and data services server, we have added the fully fledged enterprise service bus. Although, as I mentioned before, you can use some of the ESB features in API manager, we have decided to include the full-blown ESB in order to support future expansion of this platform. And since this ESB supports message routing, mediation, transformation of the messages, load balancing, failover, task scheduling, and much more, this platform will be more flexible, and we can make changes more easily. And also in this case, we have a clean separation of concerns and that's why we added the ESB. So yeah, this is. I think I presented the whole platform and the idea behind the implementation. So
yes,
Rob, you can continue with the next steps.
About what's a beacon. We talked about the solution that we're making, what we're developing for the beacon, and a very logical one is, so what's next? As I said, it's a living lab, but we believe that the iBeacon Mile is just the beginning. And what we're going to do next year is we're going to expand the iBeacon Mile with 2,500 beacons in Amsterdam. So literally every bus and tram stop will have a beacon, as well as will parks. Perhaps in libraries or other public buildings, you will find beacons that will offer a very specific information tailored to the person who is visiting, but also tailored to what the owner of the park or the library or the owner of the bus and tram stops want to do with it, because everyone has their own content that they would like to push. And one of the most important things that we consider is that we need a sustainable business model. And with sustainable, I mean a business model that will allow organizations to build, maintain, and manage new iBeacon networks, so that we don't need to rely on subsidies and stuff like that. We believe that beacons will add value to organizations, and we could build a business model out of it, so that actually there will be more networks. There will be more networks in Amsterdam, there will be more networks in other cities, and we're actively sharing our experiences with other cities. So if you are interested from whatever perspective that you would have, you're working for a city, you're working for a retailer, you're working for a heritage organization, museums use them a lot as well, get in touch with us and we're happy to share our experience. We also believe in the concept of a managed beacon with, for instance, a pay-per-use advertising model. So basically, don't care about beacons. I want to have this many people who will come to my store. If they're near a beacon, we can push some advertising content, of course, with their okay, they're okay with it, and we're actively pursuing that. And we would like to move from an iBeacon living lab to a real iBeacon infrastructure in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, and perhaps even in the whole world. So in every bus and tram stop, I already talked a little bit about that. This is actually the inside of one of these billboards that you will see at a tram stop, and you see the beacon placed in there across the city of Amsterdam, and it enables a lot of things. It enables education, it enables tourism. For instance, the Rijksmuseum is near a tram stop, of course, because people want to go to the Rijksmuseum. With the beacons, we can actually see and push information about, it's now not so busy in the Rijksmuseum. Come now, go in, and you will have a great experience without thousands of tourists in front of you of the Nachtwacht, which is, by the way, is quite a big painting, so you would see it anyway. So I think we covered the whole presentation as far as we would like. I think we are now ready for question and answers, and I've seen a number of questions already come in. So I'm going to the first question. Let's see. The first question, that there are probably more questions than we can answer in the time that still remains. I think the first question is for Jonathan. Jonathan, if you switch to your microphone on. It seems that beacons can be mobile. Is this being tested, for instance, on public transport?
Yes. Yes, we have an experiment that we've been running for around, I think, 9 months actually. It's not in the city of Amsterdam, but it's not that far away. It's a concept that we can use a combination of app and beacons to encourage students to travel or not to travel during the most busy parts of the day. So we actually there is a case where they're installed in the roofs of trains and on the platforms, and they're used to verify the journeys to push information to remind the student that it's if they wait for 20 minutes, then they can accumulate rewards, and ultimately to verify that they've travelled, so that they can actually get all sorts of free stuff. I think they get free Netflix tokens and Apple tokens just for travelling not in the rush hour, and that's been very successful. I think there's been a 30 or 40% change in behaviour in that case. So yeah, I think that answers the question. Hello? Hi, can people hear me?
Apparently Rob has some trouble with his microphone.
Okay. So, what should we do now?
So let's okay, I think Rob is back. I just
Do you have any more questions that we can answer? Because I don't see them on my panel. Maybe
I
some more
sent
questions.
the final one a couple of minutes ago.
Okay.
Okay, there's one more that I'm just going to send that to you right now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can now. Welcome back.
Okay. One of the questions was on device management. Are you able to see if a beacon is not working?
The answer to that is that on the LoRa-enabled remotely managed beacons, the connected beacons, yes, we can see it because it's like having a managed network. On the ones which are not managed, we can see it with the cooperation of the app developers, because some app developers, when they pass a beacon, they upload to the API the fact that they've seen a beacon and they ask for content, and so by elimination you can imagine that if you see a black spot, then probably that beacon is out of action. But this is something that we wanted to solve with the remotely managed beacons, because especially for large deployments, that is a pretty big question, together with battery. All of the ones that we put out there now, we've made sure they're solar powered, so that saves us a lot of maintenance.
Yes, well, it does. You need the sun to shine in Amsterdam, but the last couple of days that's been pretty much okay. Daniel, can you share a concrete example example of data service that have already been exposed for usage, and perhaps also in conjunction with Jonathan, and where app developers have already commenced using it? Daniel or Jonathan, who wants to take the lead?
Yeah, I think this question is better suited for Jonathan because he has more insight on what is used right now.
Yeah, well, we were lucky enough to have a lot of historical footage and historical data similar to the clip which Rob showed at the beginning, and we were able to actually link those to a lot of the beacons. And I know that there are a couple of apps out there who are linking your proximity to beacons with historic pictures and historic movie clips. That's happening at the moment. I know that Bard Boggy is an app which is giving coupons and discounts to people visiting bars and restaurants. The Sail app itself, which was, as Rob said, one of the, I think, the largest outdoor event in the world, actually, 2.5 million visitors. They used all of the beacons of the beacon art directly in their app for crowd control and to see where everybody was going for safety purposes. So there's already, for such a short time, there's already quite a few good implementations out there.
Okay, great. I think that given the time, it's 3 minutes, or we have 2 minutes left in this webinar, that we will keep it at that. The remaining questions that were sent in, we will answer them and we'll post them somewhere online, somewhere near the webinar that's on demand from the website from WSO2. So thank you for your time, thank you for your patience, thank you for your great questions, and if you have any questions pertaining to beacons, the iBeacon Mile, or you just want to talk to us, get in touch with us via Yenlo or via Glimworm. Thank you, and good night, good morning, or good day.
Yes, good night.